The cold that night was so sharp it turned my breath into smoke. I remember the exact moment, 8:14 p.m. The kitchen clock ticked like a tiny heartbeat in the quiet house. The heater popped and cracked, fighting the winter air, and the ginger tea I had just poured sent up a small ribbon of steam, the last bit of warmth in a long, lonely day. Then the door opened. Daniel, my only son, stood in the doorway. His eyes were red. His work shirt still had the company badge clipped crookedly to the pocket. He looked like a man who had walked through a storm he wasn't brave enough to describe. Beside him stood Jessica, my daughter-in-law, her blonde hair pulled tight, her lips painted red, her eyes cold. Cold like a mirror, with nothing behind it. And behind them, a man in a black suit, carrying a leather briefcase. A lawyer. My heart sank. I didn't need anyone to introduce him. I knew. Something terrible was coming. They walked inside without waiting for me to say a single word. Jessica's heels hit the hardwood floor sharp, hard, each step like a hammer. The front door closed behind them with a heavy thud. It sounded like a verdict being delivered. Jessica placed a thick stack of papers on my dining table, the same place I used to serve my husband Mark his favorite pie. The memory stabbed me. Her voice cut the air, smooth and icy, each word a blade. Sign it. Sign the transfer. Put the house under our name. If you don't, you will never see your grandson again. My knees went weak. My hands began trembling. My chest tightened like someone had tied ropes around it. I turned to Daniel, my son, the boy I raised with cracked hands and sleepless nights. The boy who once said he would always protect me, but he didn't meet my eyes. He stared at the floor, like a child hiding a sin. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock tick through each painful second. I whispered, barely breathing, "Daniel, is this what you want?" He didn't answer, just a small nod, barely there, but enough to send my heart crashing down into darkness. I wasn't afraid of losing the house, not at all. What hurt, what truly broke me, was the realization that my son wasn't being forced. He was participating. Jessica slid a pen toward me. The metal tapped against the table, a sharp, cold sound, like the click of handcuffs. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Parker, this is a simple transfer of ownership. A formality. All you need to do is sign." I looked at the three people standing in front of me, people I once called family, but that night, they weren't my family anymore. I took a breath. Slow, deep, steady. Then I looked at the papers, and something inside me shifted. A strength I didn't know I still had rose up like fire. I smiled. A small, unexpected smile. Because they didn't know months earlier, I had begun to see the truth. I had suspected. I had watched. I had prepared. And tonight, the prey wasn't me. It was them. This is a long story. A painful story. A story of betrayal, manipulation, and survival. But it's also the story of how I reclaimed myself. If you're a mother, if you've ever loved someone who hurt you, stay until the end. Because what happened next changed everything. And it all began on that freezing night. I was born in a small town where people fixed things with their own hands, prayed before dinner, and believed a home was more than wood. Maybe that's why this white two-story house in Colorado became the center of my world. Not because of the porch or the garden or the creaking stairs, but because every inch of it carried a memory, a scent, a piece of my heart. I was 29 when my husband Mark and I bought it. We had almost nothing then. We signed papers with hope instead of money. The house was old and tired. The paint was peeling. The roof leaked, and winter wind sliced through the windows like a blade. But we didn't care. We had a child, Daniel, only 4 years old. His laughter filled rooms that smelled like dust and broken dreams, and somehow it became enough. Mark and I worked jobs we didn't love to keep the mortgage alive. Day and night. I stitched clothes in the evenings. He patched walls and hammered stubborn nails. Some nights we were too exhausted to talk, but we always kissed Daniel goodnight. Always. I still remember the sound of Daniel's tiny feet slapping on the wooden hallway as Head run to our room at dawn. "Mommy, pancakes!" Head shout. And I would make them. Even if I had slept only 2 hours, life felt hard, but warm, full, honest. Then Mark died. It was a crisp autumn morning. orange leaves everywhere. He collapsed in the driveway. A heart attack, fast, ruthless, silent. One blink, and I became a widow at 55. One blink, and Daniel lost the father he adored. The funeral was quiet. The world felt unfair. The house felt too big, too empty, too cold. But I kept going. For Daniel, for the promise I'd made, Mark the night before he died, I'll protect him, no matter how old he gets. I didn't know then how complicated that promise would become. Daniel grew into a fine young man, polite, tall, kind, or what I believed kindness looked like. When he told me he wanted to study engineering, I worked 2 jobs to help him. I skipped doctor's visits to save money. I ate soup for days so he could buy textbooks. When he graduated, he hugged me so tight my bones creaked. "Mom," he said, "one day I'll buy you a bigger house." I didn't want a bigger house. I wanted him safe. I wanted this house, our house, to stay with us until the end. Years passed. Daniel found a good job, moved out, built a life. I stayed in the house with the soft blue walls and the old armchair Mark used to sit in. I found comfort in small routines. Tea at 7, radio at 9, knitting near the window when snow started to fall. I thought everything was settled, predictable, safe. But life never warns you before it changes. The first shift came quietly, a distance, a missed Sunday dinner. Another, then another, a shorter hug, a rushed phone call. I told myself he was busy, young, building a career. I didn't want to believe something deeper was slipping away. Then, one spring afternoon, Daniel came over with a smile too bright to be real and said he had news. "Mom, I'm getting married." I hugged him. I cried. I believed joy was entering our family. I believed the hole Mark left might finally feel less empty. I believed I'd gain a daughter. But that was before I met Jessica. She walked into my home with perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect polish, but not a single trace of warmth. Her eyes wandered across my living room, jumping from window frames to ceilings to corners, measuring them, judging them. Not noticing the photos on the wall, not noticing the blanket I knitted during Daniel's college years, not noticing my trembling excitement as I tried to welcome her. Her first words in my home weren't about family, or memories, or the beautiful day outside. They were, "Wow, this place is big. Houses around here go for a lot, right?" Something in me tightened, a small knot, a whisper of fear. I pushed it away. I smiled. I offered her tea. She declined. I should have paid more attention. But mothers often choose hope over truth. We want to believe our children are safe, loved, cherished. Weeks turned into months, and Jessica's visits became more frequent, but never warm, never thoughtful. She walked through my home like a real estate agent doing a silent appraisal. She'd touch the walls, peek into the attic door, stand by the staircase, calculating something I couldn't name yet. Every time she left, the house felt colder. One evening, I called Daniel after noticing she'd been in my study without asking. "Oh, Mom," he said lightly. "Jessica's curious." "Don't be sensitive." Sensitive. The word stung. I brushed it off, because that's what mothers do. But something else happened, something I couldn't ignore. I found my old will rumpled, bent, out of place. The folder was half open, as if someone had just touched it, looked through it, studied it. My heart dropped, my hands shook, my mind spun. I stood there for a long time, alone in my study, feeling the walls closing in, feeling the house, my house, suddenly unsafe. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the windows. The shadows felt heavier. The tea tasted bitter. Something was coming. I felt it in my bones, the way older women feel storms long before they hit, and I was right. Because the next chapter of my life would begin with a knock on the door. A knock that would change everything. The night they came with a lawyer, a pen, and an ultimatum, I realized I wasn't just facing disrespect. I was facing a plan. A plan they believed I was too old, too lonely, too gentle to fight. They were wrong. The first true crack in our family didn't come from shouting or anger. It came quietly, like a hairline fracture in glass, small, invisible, but deadly once pressure starts to build. It started one late morning in early autumn. The sky was gray, the kind of color that makes you want to stay under blankets. I was sweeping the kitchen floor when I heard the door unlock. Jessica walked in. No knock, no call, she simply appeared, stepping inside like she owned the place. "Jessica?" I asked, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming." "Oh," she said softly, her heels clicking across the hardwood. "Daniel mentioned you sometimes forget things. I figured you probably forgot." I froze. "Forget? Me?" The broom in my hand felt suddenly heavy. She wandered into the living room, touching frames, running her fingers along the furniture, inspecting the space with that same silent calculation. "It's big," she murmured. "Really big for one person." There it was again. That tone, that subtle push. I tried to ignore it. I tried to smile. But something in my chest tightened. Later that day, Daniel came over. I mentioned how Jessica had entered without knocking. He laughed. "Mom, it's not a big deal. We're family." Family. The word felt sour. Family doesn't walk into your home uninvited. Family doesn't talk to you like a child. Family doesn't study your house like a prize. But I swallowed my discomfort and let it sit in silence. A few weeks passed. The visits continued. And every time she came, something felt off. Shed comment on the stairs. Steep, aren't they? Shed comment on the draft. Cold in winter. I bet. Shed comment on the roof. Probably expensive to fix. Always a remark. Always a seed. Always a subtle reminder that the house was too much for me. Then came the dinner. Daniel and Jessica invited me over to their apartment, a modern place with spotless countertops and cold lighting. I brought a pie I baked that morning. Jessica didn't touch it. Halfway through dinner, she set her fork down and said, "Linda, have you ever thought about living closer to us?" I smiled politely. "I'm quite comfortable where I am." She leaned forward, her voice dripping with concern, false concern. "It's just, when people get older, big houses can be dangerous, and expensive, and lonely." Lonely. It hit hard, like a slap made of words. Daniel reached for her hand, nodding along. "Mom, Jess just wants what's best." But the way he said it, soft, hesitant, almost rehearsed, told me something else. He believed her more than he believed me. We finished dinner, but my heart felt bruised. The next day brought the moment that changed everything. I returned from the grocery store with bags full of apples, flour, and tea. I walked upstairs to put things away. When I reached my study, the door was open just slightly, enough to feel wrong. I pushed it open, and there she was, Jessica, standing at my desk, holding my old will. She looked up, startled, but only for a second. Then she smiled. "Oh, I thought this was a storage closet. I was just looking for a notepad." Liar. Clear as day. My mouth went dry. "You found it?" "Yes," she said calmly. "By the way, have you updated your will recently? Just to avoid confusion, you know. Families always fight about money after someone passes." Passes. Such an easy word for her. I felt a sting behind my eyes. Fear, sadness, anger, all tangled. She walked past me and left without another word. The house suddenly felt colder. The walls felt thinner. My memories felt less safe. I sat at my desk after she left. I opened the old will. My name trembled on the page. Everything felt wrong. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The shadows stretched across the room like long fingers. Something inside me whispered, "This isn't curiosity. This is preparation." And that was when I realized love wasn't the only thing growing in my home. Suspicion was growing too. Greed. Intent. A plan slowly forming behind polite smiles. And then the missing documents. 1 week later, I noticed certain papers weren't where I left them. Bank statements. Insurance forms. Nothing huge, but enough to unsettle me. Enough to confirm I wasn't imagining things. Then Daniel stopped by. He looked tired, distracted. Not like my boy. He asked, "Mom, have you ever thought about what happens to the house? You know, in the future?" My breath caught. There it was. The first time the question was spoken out loud. I whispered, "Daniel, why are you asking me that?" He shrugged. Just thinking ahead, Jess says. I stopped him. I don't care what Jess says. He blinked, shocked. The room fell silent. He looked hurt. I looked away. Something had shifted, something deep. And I knew this wasn't the end of it. It was the beginning. Because exactly 1 week later, they returned. With a lawyer, a pen, and an ultimatum that would shatter the ground beneath my feet. The knock was impatient. Not the polite, neighborly knock of old friends. Not the one that waits for an invitation. This one came hard, like a demand. It split the quiet of my little house in two. Wind tapped the windows. The kettle hissed and then went silent. I opened the door. Daniel stood there first. His eyes were red-rimmed. He smelled of work and worry. He looked smaller than I remembered. He wore the polite face of a man who thought he had to choose between loyalties. Behind him, Jessica walked in like she owned the hallway. Her heels clicked on the floorboards. The sound felt like a metronome counting down. Behind them, a man in a dark suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as their attorney with a practiced voice. His shoes were clean. His tie was precise. He placed a folder on my kitchen table like a judge laying down a sentence. They sat down at my table. The lamp threw a soft circle of light. The rest of the room drowned into shadow. "Mom," Daniel began, voice low, "we need to talk about the house." I tightened my fingers around the mug in my hands. My knuckles went white. "Okay," I said. Simple. I wanted to hear what they would say. Jessica didn't wait. She slid a stack of paper toward me. Each sheet looked new. The top one had bold, typed words, transfer of ownership, terms and conditions. The layout was clinical, cold. "Sign here," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Calm that felt like a threat. I looked at Daniel. He didn't meet my eyes. He looked down. He rubbed his thumb against his index finger. A nervous tick I used to kiss away when he was a boy. Now it looked like guilt. "If you sign," Jessica said, "we will take care of everything. Taxes, maintenance, insurance. We will move you into an apartment near us. Professional care. You will be safe." She angled the words like bait. She smiled as if offering candy. "And if you don't?" the lawyer asked gently, pen poised in his hand like a scalpel. Jessica's smile dropped. The room tightened. "You won't see your grandson as much," she said. "No emotions necessary. Just the line. Clear. Brutal. Calculated." I felt something break inside me. Not anger at first. A loneliness so large it swallowed my breath. My chest hurt. My hands shook. I had raised this boy. I had stayed up nights sewing patches into his school uniforms. I had baked his 13th birthday cake until my fingers ached. And now, the cry for my signature sat between us like a price tag. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, it's complicated. We're thinking about what's best for everybody." Best for who? I thought. My thoughts flickered like a faulty bulb. Best for the house? Or best for the people who wanted it? Jessica leaned forward. "Think of your safety, of expenses. You wouldn't want anything to happen where no one could help." I looked at the stack of pages. I thought about Mark. I thought about late nights patching the roof. I thought about the photograph of my family on the mantle, the one where Daniel is little and gripping Mark's finger like the world is a rope to hold on to. My throat closed up and the photograph blurred. "You are asking me to sign away my life," I said slowly. Each word felt heavy. "You ask me to give what my husband and I built to you." Jessica gave a small laugh. "We're not asking for everything. We just want to keep you safe and make things easier." The lawyer slid a pen across the table, its clip catching the light like a smile. "No pressure, Mrs. Parker," he said. "Just a signature for a simpler future." I could have signed. I could have chosen the easy path. The path everyone says is sensible when they don't live with the memories. I could have closed the whole thing with one loop of ink. But I didn't, because 3 months before that night, when shadows began to feel longer, I had gone to see a lawyer, a different one. Quiet, gray-haired Mr. Bennett. I had taken my time. I had read, asked, signed. I had not told Daniel, not because I was secretive, but because I wanted to test who the family was when confronted with what they wanted. I had put the property into a living trust. I named a beneficiary who never asked for anything. I created an affidavit that would nullify any document signed under duress. I had a recorded video of me signing the living trust. In my kitchen, the camera that sat on the shelf, the very shelf that held my china, had been running when Jessica had picked up the will months ago. They had not expected preparedness. They had not expected resistance. So I looked at the pen, at Daniel, at Jessica, at the lawyer. I breathed in. The air tasted like iron and tea, and a little of something I had not felt in years, clarity. "I'm not signing," I said. The room shifted. The lawyer's smile thinned. Jessica's face went pale and tight with something like rage. Daniel's shoulders sank. For a second I saw the boy I used to tuck into bed. Then he was gone. "You don't understand," Jessica snapped now. "If you don't sign, you'll be isolated. You'll be alone. We will make sure you see your grandson only sometimes." How does that feel? For someone who loves being with family. It was a vile threat, wearing the face of concern. "You can't threaten me with family," I said through my teeth. I felt like the words were small, a poor defense against the avalanche. I wanted to shout. I wanted to cry. I wanted to shake them. Instead, I kept my voice steady. "You misunderstand me, Jessica. This house is not only walls, it's memory. You can't just take that." Jessica's hand trembled slightly as she pushed the papers closer. The lawyer leaned in. He began to talk about fiduciary responsibilities and obligations, and the paperwork needed if someone becomes incapacitated. In the exchange that followed, Daniel's silence was worse than any insult. His presence there, unmoving, made the room colder. He stood between the person who raised him and the person who would replace that love with convenience and calculation. I felt rage then. Pure, white-hot, motherly fury, not the wild kind you see in movies. The careful fury of someone who knows the value of what they risk losing. I did not scream. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I pressed record on the little camera I used for knitting tutorials and for sending silly greetings. I held it on the table, pointed at them, and said in a voice that did not tremble, "This conversation is being recorded." Jessica's nails dug into her palm. The lawyer's jaw tightened. Daniel's face crumpled. The words in the lawyer's practiced mouth faltered for a second. They had come to pressure me into signing. They had thought I was old and alone. But the camera whirred on, and the truth was about to start walking across the table like a loaded gun. The lawyer opened his briefcase like a man pulling out a weapon. He smiled that professional smile, the kind you see before someone argues in court. He asked if I understood what I was being offered. He spoke in careful paragraphs. He explained the consequences of not signing. He said words like negligence, risk, and financial burden, as if they were blankets you could wrap around a life. I watched them all. I was calm on the outside. Inside, my heart banged like a drum. Memories spilled over, Mark's laugh by the stove, the scraping of Daniel's shoes after school, the night my son held my hand and promised to look after me. Those things lined up behind my eyes like soldiers, waiting for instructions. I reached into the drawer beneath the table. My fingers found the small blue folder I had tucked away months earlier. I could feel the texture of the folder like a secret. I had practiced the opening in my head a dozen times. I had rehearsed what I would say, but rehearsals never felt like the real thing. Real felt raw. Real felt heavy. I placed the blue folder on the table. The lawyer glanced at it, curious. Jessica choked back a laugh, an ugly sound before it could leave her mouth. "You have something to show?" the lawyer asked. I opened the folder slowly. I laid the pages flat. The trust document was clean and precise. The formal title read, Parker Family Revocable Living Trust. My name, my signature, the date. Each line felt like a shield. "And here," I said, placing another paper on top, "is an affidavit I had prepared in the event anyone tried to coerce me." My voice was steady. Too steady, perhaps for the moment. Jessica's mouth fell open. Daniel looked at the papers as if the ink might melt. The lawyer leaned forward now, the snap of leather against wood loud in the room. "Mrs. Parker? A living trust?" he said, incredulous. "When was this prepared?" 3 months ago, I answered. "Signed with witnesses. Signed with a lawyer who verified my competency. There's a video of the signing. And I have copies of each page with timestamps." The room felt smaller. The light from the lamp made their faces look sharp, exposed. Jessica's fake calm dissolved like sugar in hot tea. The edges of her composure frayed. Daniel stood frozen, as if caught in a net. "Who is the beneficiary?" the lawyer asked, now with professional curiosity that masked concern. I let the silence sit for a moment and let them feel the weight of it. Then I spoke, slow and deliberate. I named Emily Young as the primary beneficiary. The change in the room was like a gust. Jessica's color drained. Daniel's shoulders slumped. I could see the math of it in their faces: shock, anger, betrayal, confused, disbelief. Emily, a young woman from down the street who had once needed a hand and had never asked for money. Emily, who had brought soup when I was sick. Emily, who had sat on my porch on windy evenings and knitted beside me. Emily, who had not once asked for my home. Jessica snapped. "Who is Emily? Why her? She's not family." "No," I said. "She is someone who saw me when others walked past. She loved me when I was human and messy. She doesn't want my house. She wants me." There was a small voice inside me that hummed like a hymn, a rightness. It was not revenge. It was justice for the heart. The lawyer flipped through the documents. He found notarizations, witness signatures, and a line that made his eyes narrow. "Affidavit of duress protection," he read. "It declares that any document signed under duress is void." Jessica's composure broke into something ugly. She stood up, palms clenched. "This is a scam," she spat. "You can't do this. Daniel is your son, Daniel is my son," I interrupted quietly. Quiet, so sharp it cut. "And he will always be. But being a son does not entitle him to treat me as a vessel." Daniel swallowed. For the first time that night, his voice came out like a child's. "Mom, why would you do this without telling me? Why would you set someone else up, someone not family?" "Because the sign of true family isn't blood," I said. "It's presence. It's care. It's years. Emily has been present." The lawyer's pen scribbled. He cleared his throat. "Mrs. Parker, legally these documents appear in order. If they are authentic, any attempt to enforce a signed transfer obtained under coercion may be void. But be aware this could lead to a legal battle. Your son and his wife could seek to challenge the trust in court." Jessica's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. "We will do exactly that," she said. "Well, prove she's not competent. Well, argue undue influence." Daniel flinched. Those words felt like a spear. To suggest I wasn't competent. To suggest I needed someone to decide for me. The thought of being paraded before strangers, questioned about my mind and memory, it made me feel raw and small in a way the night's earlier threats had not. "You can try," I said, "but I signed every page in front of witnesses. I had my competence verified. I will not be spoken for." The lawyer looked at Jessica. He looked at Daniel. He then looked at me with a new kind of respect. The respectful caution of a person who sees the groundwork laid by someone who prepared. Jessica's face twisted. "You'll pay for this," she said, venom in her whisper. "You'll regret it." I let the words land and then fade. They were angry, rusty words. They meant less than the sound of my own steady breath. I felt tired, so tired but oddly resolute. Something inside me had shifted. I was no longer the woman who took corners and accepted explanations. I had carried this house through love, and I would not let it be reduced to a ledger. They left that night with fists clenched and words like threats. But before they closed the door, the lawyer slid a business card across the table. On it was a small typed phrase. "We will see you in court." The card sat on my table like a challenge, and I realized then, the true fight had only begun. The door slammed. Their footsteps faded down the walkway. The house fell silent. Not peaceful silent, not soft, winter evening silent. A silence that felt like a wound. I stood in my kitchen, the kettle still warm. The papers scattered across the table like broken glass. My breath came in shallow waves. I didn't cry right away. The tears sat somewhere behind my ribs, waiting like a storm that knew exactly how to destroy. The living room lamp cast a warm yellow circle across the floor. Everything outside that circle felt dark and far away. I heard the old refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, the settling creak of the floorboards, as if the house itself exhaled with me. For a moment, I felt 67 years old. Not in body, in heart. Because that night, I didn't lose my home, but I lost Daniel. Not legally, not physically, but spiritually. emotionally. And that kind of loss has no funeral, no black clothes, no casseroles brought by neighbors, no priest whispering comfort. You just stand in a quiet house, staring at the walls that once held your happiness, and feel something tear inside. I walked to the hallway where Mark's photo hung. His smiling face, his gentle eyes, the same eyes Daniel inherited. "Mark," I whispered. My voice trembled. "They want the house. They want to take everything we built." I touched the photo frame. My fingers shook. The cold glass burned. "And they used our grandson," I said, choking. "Our baby boy used my love as a bargaining chip." The tears finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, just the steady, broken kind that comes from a quiet, shattered heart. I sank into Mark's old armchair, the one with the sun-faded fabric and worn armrests. I held the blanket Emily knitted last Christmas, soft, wool, warm. It smelled a little like lavender and something gentle. The front door opened. I startled. My breath caught. A young voice called softly, "Linda?" Emily stepped inside, hair in a messy bun, a hoodie, leggings, warm eyes full of concern. "I saw Daniel," she said gently. "He looked angry. And Jessica, well, she looked like she wanted to kill someone. So I came over, just to check." My throat tightened. Emily's presence felt like a lifeline thrown into a dark ocean. "They tried to make me sign," I whispered. Emily came closer. Kneeling beside the armchair, she took my hand, small, warm, steady. "What did they say?" she asked. I swallowed. "He said it was best for everyone. She said I wouldn't see my grandson if I didn't sign away the house." Emily's face twisted in disgust. "That's sick. People don't do that. Normal people don't do that." I laughed a hollow, broken sound. "Daniel didn't stop her," I said. "He didn't say a word." Emily squeezed my hand harder. Her voice dropped into a soft whisper. "Linda, I'm so sorry." The wind rattled the windows. The old porch swing creaked outside. The house felt tired like me. "They think I'm weak," I whispered. "They think I'm old and alone and that I'll give up." "You're not weak," Emily said firmly. "You're one of the strongest people I know. The fact that they underestimated you doesn't make you weak. It makes them stupid." I laughed again, this time with a little strength. She stayed with me, sat on the floor, talked softly, sometimes not talking at all, just breathing with me. Time stretched. Midnight came quietly. "Linda," Emily said, standing, "if you need me tonight, I'll stay." I looked at her, really looked at her. A young woman who owed me nothing, who shared no blood, who had her own life. Yet she stayed, held my hand, made me feel less alone. "Thank you," I whispered. She hugged me, a warm, gentle, real hug. When she left, I walked back to the study. I opened the safe. I pulled out the living trust documents. I placed my hand over them. "I did the right thing," I whispered. Though it hurt like hell, the house felt still. Not peaceful. Not yet. Just still. Waiting. Like it knew another storm was coming. And it was. Because 3 days later, I received a letter that turned everything upside down. Not from Daniel. Not from Jessica. From a law firm. A letter accusing me of being mentally unfit. The letter arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. The sky was pale gray, the kind of color that sits heavy on your chest. I found the envelope in the mailbox, thick, official, cruel. The sender, Harrington and Cole Family Law. My stomach dropped. I knew that name. Jessica once bragged about them. "Best in Colorado for guardianship battles," Shed said. Guardianship. My hands went cold. Inside, the letter was crisp, formal, sharp like a knife made of paper. They were petitioning the court for a capacity evaluation, a legal attempt to prove I was mentally incompetent. If they succeeded, I would lose control of everything. My house, my finances, my autonomy, my voice. The words on the page blurred. In the interest of her well-being, concerning signs of cognitive decline, possible undue influence by outside parties. By outside parties, I knew exactly what that meant. They were accusing Emily of manipulating me. My knees nearly buckled. I sat down on the porch steps. The wood was cold beneath me. The wind cut through my jacket. My breath came shaky. They were playing dirty, lower than I ever imagined. The screen door creaked. Emily stepped out holding a mug of steaming tea. Linda? She saw my face. Her smile vanished. She knelt beside me. What happened? I handed her the letter. Her eyes skimmed it, then darkened. Her jaw clenched. They're trying to declare you incompetent. Her voice trembled with anger. That's... Linda, this is abuse. This is elder abuse. I nodded weakly. I know. Emily stood up fast, too fast, pacing, her hair whipping as the wind picked up. She looked like a storm, a young woman furious on behalf of someone she loved. We're calling your lawyer, she said. Right now. I followed her inside, legs unsteady. Mr. Bennett answered on the second ring. Calm, measured, a voice that felt like solid ground. He asked me to read the letter, slowly, clearly. He sighed. I suspected this might happen, he said. My breath caught. You did? Yes. When someone loses control of a potential inheritance, they often respond with aggression, especially someone like your daughter-in-law. I winced. What do I do? I whispered. You fight, he said simply. You show up with your evaluations, your medical tests, your witnesses. You show the court you are capable, competent, and aware. And it'll be right there beside you. I closed my eyes. Relief washed over me like warm light. We scheduled a meeting for the next morning. Emily drove me. I sat in the passenger seat, twisting my hands together as Denver highways blurred past. Snowflakes drifted across the windshield like tiny ghosts. You okay? She asked. Scared, I whispered. Good, she said. I looked at her, startled. She softened. It means you're aware. People who are truly losing it don't feel fear. They feel confusion. You're scared because you know exactly what's at stake. Her words steadied me. Mr. Bennett greeted us at his office, a small, tidy space filled with leather-bound books and soft lamps. He reviewed everything, explained the steps, the hearing, the tests, the questions it'd face. I sat there, absorbing every detail. Emily sat beside me, absorbing twice as much. Will they win? I finally asked. Mr. Bennett looked at me over his glasses. No, he said. Calm, certain. You are not incompetent. You are not confused, and they have no evidence. Tears pricked my eyes, but not from sadness, from validation, from the feeling of someone believing me. When we left his office, snow began to fall thicker. The city lit up with traffic lights and glowing windows. They're desperate, Emily said as we drove home. That's why they're attacking your mind. I nodded. I can't believe Daniel agreed to this. Emily didn't respond right away. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Hez, drowning, she said softly. And when people drown, they grab whoever's closest. Sometimes, they grab the wrong person. Her words hurt, because they were true. At home, I made us tea. We sat at the table where Daniel had once colored with crayons, where Mark and I had once carved pumpkins, where Jessica had slammed papers demanding I sign. Emily reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever happens, she said, you're not alone. My throat tightened. My heart ached, but in that ache was a spark, a small flame. Strength. For the first time since the knock on my door, I felt something returning. Not certainty, not victory, just a quiet determination. I folded the letter, placed it on the table, looked at it like an enemy. I finally understood. I'm going to fight, I said, and I'm going to win. But I had no idea that Daniel would show up the very next night. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to deliver another blow, one far deeper than a lawsuit. The knock at the door was softer this time, not angry, not triumphant, just something like a shadow that had wandered back home. My heart skipped anyway. The house hummed with the old refrigerator and the heater's small cough. Snow brushed the windows like finger strokes. I wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and walked to the door. Daniel stood there in the porch light, He smelled of too many cigarettes and not enough sleep. His hands were numb. He kept them in his pockets like a child trying to hide something he had broken. "Mom," he said. His voice sounded small. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He came in like someone walking into someone else's memory. I wanted to say so many things, but the first words out of my mouth were, "You left with the lawyer last week. You were part of that." He looked away. The silence felt like glass. I could hear the kettle whistle faintly in the kitchen. The floorboards creaked when he took a step. He started, but the sentence collapsed. He walked to the table where the trust and affidavit lay. He didn't touch them. He stared. I watched his lips shape words that he swallowed. "I filed something," he said finally. The words fell like a stone into the room. Not against you. I thought it would make things clearer." My chest tightened. The world reduced to a pinpoint. Flight or freeze. The years folded back. Him at 6, crawling under the table to steal cookies. Him at 16, hiding a scraped knee. Him at 25, telling me he'd take care of me. All those moments crashed together. "What did you file?" I asked. "A petition for a capacity evaluation," he said. "They advised it." "Jess," she said, "it would be best to be safe. To make sure you're all right." His words were surgical. They cut to the bone. I felt tired in a way I had not known before. The weariness of someone who has been betrayed, slowly, patiently, like water eroding stone. "You were here," I said. "You sat at this table. You watched her push those papers. You watched her," my voice broke. "You watched her threaten to keep me from my grandson." He flinched. Shame crossed his face like a cold wind. "I know," he whispered. "I know." He looked at me. Really looked. For the first time that night, there was something raw in his face, regret, fear, confusion. Then his eyes hardened. They told me they were worried about taxes, about upkeep. They said if something happened, someone should handle it. Someone should handle it? I repeated, bitterness rising like bile. "Is that how you think of me? As something that needs handling?" He knelt down on the floor, like the kid who used to ask for a scraped knee to be kissed better. He clasped my hand, fingers rough and trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean sorry." The word hung between us like a fragile bridge. It did not repair things. It did not fix nights of loneliness, or the way Jessica had smiled over the papers, as if she'd already moved the furniture. It did not bring back the nights I stayed up worrying about him. It did not bring back Mark. He told me then, in a string of broken explanations, how Jessica frightened him with talk of responsibility, of risk, how the law firm made it sound professional, how his head was full of charts and numbers, and how that sounded reasonable to him when he was exhausted. He told me he had wanted to protect me, but protection had been packaged as control. As he spoke, I watched him unravel the man he had become. The boy who used to come in drenched from rain and ask if Id saved him a slice of pie was thin beneath the adult. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to slam dishes and shout. But something else bloomed in my chest. Sorrow. A deep sorrow that felt truer than fury. He was lost. So lost, he had been steered by someone who spoke of care like she spoke of property. "Did you see the folder?" I asked quietly. "The trust? The affidavit?" He nodded. "I did." "Did you watch the video of me signing it?" I asked. His face crumpled. "No," he said. "No, I didn't." "Then how can you say I'm not in my right mind?" I asked. He had no answer. He stared at the knot of my hands, at the way my fingers trembled. The house seemed to breathe with us. Outside, the snow hushed the world. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said, "but I'm so tired of being the adult." I wanted the easy answer. "Jess," she pushed. I followed. He looked like a man who had been pushed off a cliff and then clung to a piece of driftwood. He was not a villain in the classic sense. He was a frightened man who had chosen convenience over courage. "I don't know how to be the kind of son you need," he said. The words were small, terrified. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know how to fix this." I wanted to fix him. I wanted to hold him, to stitch him back together. But I could not. The house had a bruise now. The trust of a lifetime had a wound in it that might never heal the same. "What will you do now?" I asked, voice flat. He said he'd speak to the attorney that night. He would ask for a pause. He would try to stop the petition. He sounded unsure even of his own vow. I believed him only a little. Hope made me foolish. When he left, it was not with anger. It was with the heavy steps of a man bearing someone else's decisions. The snow swallowed his footprints quickly. That night I replayed his visit in fragments, the way his hands shook, the way his voice caught, the way he had knelt. I felt both relief and a hollow unease. He had not left with the satisfaction of reconciling. He had left with the complicated weight of someone who had just realized they had been wrong. 2 weeks later, I stood before the judge. Daniel sat on the other side of the room. He did something I never expected, he testified. The courtroom smelled like old books and metal. The lights were harsh and unflattering. People shuffled papers. The judge sat high like a bench of winter. The room seemed to compress around me. I felt the weight of every chair, every witness, every breath. Emily squeezed my hand as we walked in. Her touch was steady. Her face was pale but unbroken. Mr. Bennett walked with a quiet confidence. He had the steady, soft voice of someone who had seen many storms. Daniel sat at the plaintiff's table with Jessica. They looked like a different couple than the one that had strolled through my door. Jessica's face was carefully composed. Daniel's jaw was tight. His eyes met mine for a second, then dropped. When the hearing began, the attorney for the other side presented their case like a surgeon, removing fallacies. He used words like concern, risk, and safety. He painted an image of a woman living alone, vulnerable, needing protection. He spoke of subtle manipulations and outside influence. He spoke about me like I was a case file. My lawyer stood and unfurled the facts. He showed medical records. He read cognitive test results. He showed the trust documents and affidavits. He played the video of my signing. I watched myself on the screen, older, certain, deliberate. My hands moved slowly as I signed each page. My voice was calm. The video was dry, boring, but in the mundanity lay the power. It proved what my heart knew. Then, the unexpected moment arrived. Daniel stood to testify. My throat tightened. I had envisioned him on my side, apologetic. I had not imagined him as a witness for them. Yet here he was, standing slowly, the creases of his life visible in his posture. The opposing counsel asked him questions designed to show doubt. He asked about his mother's decision-making. He asked about days she had forgotten, small things, the name of a neighbor, the date of an appointment. He asked about whether she was easily influenced by someone's kindness. Each question was a small hammer. Each answer chipped away at some imagined certainty. Daniel's voice wavered. He talked about the ways I had laughed at certain things and frowned at others. He spoke of moments when I had been tired. He spoke of a picture he'd seen of my shaking hands. My heart folded, not from shock, from a kind of sorrow that felt like snow settling on a grave. Then my lawyer stood, calm, clear. He called witnesses. My physician, the social worker who had evaluated my home visits, the notary. He played the home video of me signing the trust for a second time. The courtroom watched the small domestic acts, the pen moving, the signatures, my face steady, and the air changed. The invisible scales tilted. When it was my turn to speak, the silence felt enormous. I stood, palms steady though my knees trembled. "Your Honor," I said, "I've lived my life making many small, careful choices. I am aware of what I own, and I am aware of who I love. I signed my trust to protect my life and the memory of my husband. I will not be told I don't know what I did." The judge looked at me with a slow, searching gaze. You could feel the wheels of justice turning. Outside the windows, the light was cold blue, like the kind of morning that makes you remember your first winter. The testimony continued. Jessica's face hardened. Daniel shifted in his seat, sometimes glancing at me, sometimes looking away. There were moments of quiet cruelty, questions hinted at, accusations breathed. There were other moments of tenderness, Emily's hand on my back during the recess, the clerk offering a tissue. The hearing lasted for hours. The voices blurred. The law's language felt both protective and punitive. It was like watching two storms trying to collide in a glass box. Finally, the judge called a recess. She asked the attorneys to prepare closing statements. We sat in the hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed. People murmured. I felt hollow and full at once, hollow from the strain but full of a strange, stubborn light. Whatever happens, Emily whispered, holding my hand, we did what was right. Mr. Bennett leaned over. You were steady, he said softly. You knew your mind. That's the truth. The judge cleared her throat as the court reassembled. The courtroom hummed with expectation, like a crowd waiting for a die to roll. When the judge spoke, her voice filled the room. After reviewing evidence, testimony, and the professional assessments, she began. Each word fell slowly. My stomach turned. She read the findings. The medical documentation supported my competence. The videotape verified the trust's signing with witnesses. The affidavit of duress protection was in order. She looked at Daniel, then at Jessica, then at me. I find that Mrs. Parker is of sound mind and capable of managing her affairs, she pronounced. The gavel struck wood with a final knock. The sound felt like an exhale I had been holding for weeks. Relief washed over me like sudden warm rain. I felt my shoulders slacken. Emily cried out softly, burying her face into my shoulder. Mr. Bennett smiled a tired smile. Daniel bowed his head. Jessica's face contorted anger, then bitterness, then a kind of stunned denial. The judge went on to warn that any attempt to coerce or manipulate could be subject to criminal charges. The courtroom stared. Jessica's lawyer closed his briefcase slowly. A hush held the room like a breath. I walked out into the hallway with Emily. People watched. Some leaned forward, eyes curious. Others looked away. I felt exposed yet shielded. Outside, the winter air bit my cheeks. Snow crunched underfoot. Daniel lagged behind. His words, when he finally came up to me, were small and honest. I'm sorry, Mom. Apology tastes different when it comes late. It warmed me, but it did not heal everything. We had won the battle in court, but the war for my peace had just shifted shapes. Because returning home, I found a new envelope on my table. Inside, it was a second surprise, this one from Jessica's side, and it promised trouble of a kind the law could not always shield. The envelope sat on my kitchen table like a serpent curled in silence. Snow dusted the porch outside. Emily brushed flakes from her hair as she stepped inside behind me. Linda, you okay? She asked softly. I wasn't, because I recognized the handwriting instantly. Jessica's handwriting. Hard strokes, sharp corners. No softness anywhere. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it. The house seemed to lean forward, waiting. The heater hummed. The wind rattled the window like a warning. Do you want me to open it? Emily asked. No, I said. My voice sounded older than I felt. I need to see it myself. My fingers tore the edge. A single sheet slid out. Typed, short, cold. Linda, enjoy your little victory. It won't last. You think that trust protects you? Let's see what happens when the world finds out who you really left your house to. People talk, and I know exactly how to make them talk. Jessica, the room tilted. Emily grabbed my arm. What does she mean? I knew. Oh, I knew. Small towns talk. Old towns judge. Whispers spread. Rumors take root and bloom into ugly vines. She wants to turn the neighborhood against me, I whispered. She wants to make Emily look like she's manipulating me. She wants to turn Daniel against me all over again. Emily's eyes widened. So she's going public? About the trust? I nodded. My throat tightened. She wants to poison the air I breathe. Emily took the letter from my hands and ripped it in half, then into quarters, then into smaller pieces until they fluttered like white ash onto the table. She can't control you anymore, Emily said fiercely. Not with papers, not with threats. But the truth sat heavy. The law had ruled in my favor, but public opinion, that was something else entirely. People fear scandal more than injustice. People believe rumors faster than facts. That night, the phone rang. A neighbor. She didn't even ask how I was. She simply said, Linda, is it true? You're leaving everything to some stranger girl? A stranger girl. My jaw clenched. Emily was in the kitchen making tea. She hummed under her breath a quiet, comforting little sound she did when she was nervous. Her presence filled the house with warmth I hadn't felt in years. A stranger? No. Emily was more family than people who shared my DNA. I answered gently, Emily is not a stranger. She's someone who loves me, the woman scoffed. Well, if she loved you, she wouldn't take advantage of your age. I hung up before she finished. My hand shook. I knew it, I whispered. She's calling people. She's spinning her story. Emily returned with tea. Her eyes softened instantly when she saw my face. Who was it? A neighbor, I said. Then, voice cracking, she called you a stranger who's taking advantage of me. Emily froze, her face drained. For a moment, she looked like a child, being accused of something she didn't do. Then her jaw set. This is what she wants, she said quietly. She wants you isolated. She wants you ashamed. She wants you questioning me, the one person who actually cares. I reached out and held her hand. I know who you are, I said, and I know who she is. The phone rang again, and again. Neighbors, church acquaintances, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 12 years. Some asked questions, some made sly comments, some simply wanted drama. Jessica had done it. She had weaponized gossip. By midnight, I had unplugged the phone. Emily stayed. She wrapped me in a blanket. She sat on the floor and leaned against my legs like a loyal dog keeping watch through the storm. We watched a mindless TV show, but neither of us was paying attention. Linda, Emily said quietly, staring at the flickering screen. If I'm making your life harder by being here, tell me. Step back. I don't want to hurt you. My heart ached. The idea of her leaving felt like someone snatching oxygen from my lungs. You're not the problem, I whispered. You're the reason I survived this far. Her eyes glistened. She rested her head on my knee. The night stretched. We listened to the wind, to the soft hum of the house, to each other's breathing. At 2 a.m, I finally said something that had been trapped in my throat for weeks. I chose you, Emily, because you chose me first. She closed her eyes. A tear slipped out. It hit my leg like a tiny warm drop of truth. By dawn, I knew one thing clearly. Jessica had only won the first round of public opinion, not the war, because she didn't understand something vital. You can shame a person, you can isolate a person, but you cannot break someone who has already rebuilt herself from grief. 2 days later, the situation exploded. Not because of Jessica, but because Daniel returned with news that shook the ground under all of us. It was late afternoon when Daniel arrived. No warning, no text, no cold tone through the phone, just a quiet knock, a hesitant one. I opened the door to see a man I barely recognized. Eyes tired, hair uncombed, face unshaven, hands trembling. Mom, can I talk to you? He whispered. His voice broke something open inside me. Emily was in the living room sorting yarn. She peeked up when she heard Daniel. Their eyes met awkward, hesitant, unsure. He stepped inside as if walking into a memory he wasn't sure he deserved to revisit. Sit, I said softly. He sat at the kitchen table, the same place where he once did homework, the same place where Jessica had threatened me, the same place where I had cried alone. Daniel took a deep breath. Mom. Jessica left. The words hit like a tremor through my chest. Emily froze mid-motion. What do you mean? I asked. She packed up and took a job in California. She said she needed space. She said I was useless to her now. She said she deserved better. A hollow laugh escaped him. It was a sound I'd never heard from him before, a broken sound. She called me weak, he whispered. She said if I couldn't convince you, then I wasn't worth the time. I felt a stab of pity and anger and something else, recognition. Because I knew what it felt like to be manipulated by someone you loved. Mom, Daniel said, voice small. I believed her. I believed she was doing the right thing. She told me you were confused. She told me you were lonely and vulnerable. She told me she was protecting our family. I thought I was being a good son. He put his head in his hands. His shoulders trembled. Emily stood slowly, unsure if she should stay. I nodded at her gently. She sat beside me, quiet as a presence of comfort. Daniel looked up at both of us. His eyes were bloodshot. I was wrong, he said. I was wrong about everything. He reached into his coat, pulled out another envelope. This one wasn't like Jessica's, no venom, no threats. He slid it across the table. I withdrew the petition, he said. I told the firm I wouldn't pursue anything. The judge's decision made it clear anyway. My breath softened. A small release. A tiny thaw in the winter between us. But he wasn't finished. He looked at Emily. Right at her. I owe you an apology, he said. You tried to take care of my mother, and I let someone paint you as a manipulator. I'm sorry. Emily swallowed hard. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel blinked at the two of us, the unlikely pair that life had stitched together. Then he said something that knocked the air from my lungs. I know about the trust, he said softly. I know you didn't leave the house to me. The room stilled. Even the dust motes hanging in the sunlight paused. Daniel took a shaky breath. It hurt, he admitted. I'm not going to lie. It hurt so much, I thought I would break in half. But I also get it. He looked at Emily again, then back at me. You chose the person who actually showed up for you. My eyes burned. Tears pricked. Not from pain this time. From something tender. Daniel, I whispered, you're still my son. He nodded slowly. I know. But being your son, his voice wavered, doesn't mean I deserve your house, or your legacy, or your trust. Those things are earned, not inherited. Emily's breath hitched. My heart clenched. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head bowed. I want to rebuild, he said. I want to show up. Not to get the house back, not to undo anything. Just to be your son again. The words were soft, fragile, soaked in sincerity. I reached across the table and took his hand. His fingers squeezed mine like head, been drowning for months, and finally found the surface. Then start here, I whispered. Start small, start honest. He nodded. A tear slipped down his cheek. I want to come for dinners, he said. I want to check on you. I want to fix things in the house, like Dad used to. I want to try. Emily placed her hand on top of ours. Daniel stared at her hand for a moment. Then he let it stay. A new shape formed between us, fragile but real. A beginning. As evening settled, we stood outside together. The sky blushed orange and pink. Snow melted in small patches. The cold softened. Daniel hugged me, a long, shaking hug. A hug that felt like a bridge rebuilt plank by plank. Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry I failed you. I held him tight. You didn't fail me, I said. You just forgot who you were. Now you're remembering. He nodded against my shoulder. When he drove away, Emily and I stood on the porch watching the taillights fade. Do you think he means it? She asked softly. I do, I said, but healing is slow. She slipped her arm through mine. And it'll be here, she said, no matter what. The wind carried her words across the porch. They settled into the foundation of the house. Warm, true, steady, mini cliffhanger. I thought the story might end there with forgiveness, with healing. But stories rarely end neatly. Because 2 weeks later, I received one final letter. Not from Jessica, not from Daniel, but from the attorney who witnessed my trust signing. Inside, it was a question that would change everything, a question about what I truly wanted my final legacy to be. The letter from the attorney sat on my coffee table for 2 full days before I opened it, not because I was afraid of its contents, but because I already knew whatever was inside would not be simple. Nothing in the last few months had been simple. Emily noticed me staring at it for the 3rd time that morning. She stopped stirring her tea and watched me with those gentle, alert eyes of hers. You don't have to open it alone, she said. I know, I whispered. I slid my thumb under the flap. The paper inside was thick, formal, printed in the classic serif typeface of old legal offices. Linda, as part of the annual review of your trust, I need to ask a final question. Do you wish to keep your decisions as they are, or do you want to leave a recorded final statement for your beneficiaries? This is not legally required, but it often brings clarity and closure. H. Bennett. A final statement, a recorded message attached to my trust. Something my beneficiaries would hear after I passed. A message that would survive me. I felt the room tilt, not violently, just enough to make my breath shake. Emily leaned forward. What does it say? I handed her the letter. Her eyes scanned it quickly. She exhaled slowly. A recorded statement. she murmured. That's a big thing. It is, I said. Do you want to? She asked. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked around my small, warm living room the quilt Mark and I made together. The photo of Daniel as a boy missing his 2 front teeth. The ceramic mug Emily gave me last Christmas. My life was scattered in quiet souvenirs. What would I even say? I whispered. Emily reached across the table and took my hand. Whatever comes from here, she said, touching her chest. But that was the part that scared me. Because here my heart was bruised and healing at the same time. And the truth living inside it was loving, messy, complicated. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the fir trees, turning the sky into watercolor streaks, I sat on the porch thinking. The air smelled like frost and pine. A dog barked in the distance. Everything felt still. My phone buzzed. Daniel. I almost didn't answer. Old pain has a memory. It flinches even when the danger has passed. But I picked up. Mom? He said. His voice was softer, more grounded, more real. Yes, honey. I talked to a therapist today. Shock hit me. Not painful shock, more like a gentle jolt that made my heart sit upright. That's good, I said. Really good. He took a shaky breath. She said I've been avoiding things for years. She said I tied my worth to being needed, and Jessica knew how to use that. My chest tightened. Not with anger, with grief and a strange pride. I'm glad you're talking to someone, I whispered. There was a pause. Wind rustled the trees. Daniel inhaled like he was gathering courage. Mom, I know about the trust, he said again. And I'm not asking you to change it. Truly, not anymore. I know, I said. But, he added carefully, if you ever feel like leaving a message, I'd like to hear your voice. Someday, even if it's after you're gone. My breath caught. A recorded message. The timing felt like fate's quiet nudge. I swallowed hard. I'll think about it, I said. Okay, he whispered. Good night, Mom. Good night, sweetheart. I ended the call with tears gathering beneath my eyelids. Not tears of heartbreak, tears of release. A slow unclenching. The next morning, I made my decision. I drove to Harold Bennett's office. Emily insisted on coming with me. The building was old brick with a brass door handle cold from winter. Inside, everything smelled faintly of leather and dust and safety. Harold looked up over his glasses as I entered. Linda, he said kindly, I wondered when you'd come. I want to record the statement, I told him. He nodded, unfazed. Are you sure? Yes, I said. Then I looked at Emily. And I want her here. Emily froze. Me? Yes, I said. You're part of this story. Harold guided us to a small room with warm lighting, a single camera, and a chair facing forward. It felt like a confessional, a goodbye, a truth-telling space. My hands trembled as I sat. Emily squeezed my shoulder from behind. Harold hit the button. The red light blinked. I inhaled, long and slow. Then I spoke, not like a woman defending herself, not like a woman afraid, but like a woman who had lived, loved, lost, and learned. I talked about Mark, about Daniel as a child, about what home meant to me, about the night Jessica asked me to sign away my house, about fear, about betrayal, about finding unexpected family in Emily. I cried only once when I said, love is not blood, love is presence. By the time I finished, the room felt warmer. Emily was crying silently. Harold nodded in that slow, approving way older men do when they witness truth. That, he said softly, is a legacy. I walked out to the parking lot feeling lighter than I had in years, like I had finally emptied a heavy drawer in my soul. But life has a way of testing convictions, and just when I thought everything had settled, Daniel returned one last time, not with apology, not with regret, but with a question that shook the core of my final decision. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the blinds in soft golden stripes. Emily was in the kitchen making pancakes, humming to a song from the radio. The house smelled like vanilla and old memories. I had just poured myself coffee when a knock echoed through the hallway. Not harsh, not timid, just steady. I opened the door. Daniel stood there, clean-shaven, wearing a simple sweater, eyes clear. For the first time in a long time, he looked like my son again. "Mom," he said, "can I come in?" "Of course." He stepped inside and smiled shyly at Emily. "Morning, Emily." "Morning," she said, smiling softly. There was no tension, no shadow, only awkward warmth. Daniel sat at the table, hands clasped. His shoulders rose with a deep breath. "I need to ask you something," he said. "Something real." I sat across from him. Emily hovered nearby, quiet but present. "Ask," I said. He looked at his hands for a long time. Then he whispered, "Did I lose you forever?" The air thinned. My heart twisted because beneath all the hurt, anger, and months of chaos, this was the one question he had wanted to ask all along. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. "No," I said. "You didn't lose me, but you did lose the version of me who never said no." He nodded slowly. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Not dramatic, just honest." "I can accept that," he murmured. I don't want to be erased." I squeezed his hand. "You're my son. Nothing erases that." He exhaled like he'd been underwater. Then he looked at Emily. "Emily, I know you're in Mom's trust, and I know why. I really do. I understand it now." He swallowed. "But I want to earn a place in her life again. Not her house, her life." Emily nodded. Her voice was soft but firm. "You already started." A moment of quiet warmth settled over us. Then Daniel said the words that had brought him here. "Mom, if someday you want to change the trust, I won't be upset. If you don't change it, I won't be upset either. I just want to know that I matter to you." My breath hitched, because this exact moment was the crossroads I knew would eventually come. A mother has two instincts: to protect her child and to protect herself. For months, those instincts had been at war inside me. Now they finally stood still, waiting for my answer. I wiped a tear and said, "You do matter to me, Daniel. But I'm not changing the trust." His face didn't drop. His eyes didn't darken. He just nodded. "I figured," he whispered. "But," I added, "I can still leave my heart to you." He looked confused. I smiled. "I recorded a message. For both of you." Emily's eyes widened. Daniel blinked. "A message?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "When I'm gone, you'll both hear my voice. You'll know exactly why I made the choices I made, and exactly what you meant to me." They sat there, two people who had shaped the winter of my life in such different ways, and for the first time, they both looked at me with the same expression. Love. Maybe different kinds, but love nonetheless. Daniel reached out and took my hand again. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for giving me another chance." Emily placed her hand on top of ours. "Family isn't perfect," she said quietly. "It's just people trying again." And somehow, that was enough. Weeks passed. The town calmed. Rumors faded. Snow melted into spring. Daniel visited often, not out of obligation but out of choice. Emily stayed by my side, my unexpected daughter, the one who walked into my life quietly and loved me loudly. One afternoon, as we planted flowers in the front yard, Daniel looked around and said, "This house feels different now." "It is," I said. "It feels alive again." He smiled and touched my shoulder gently. "Mom, you're alive again." My heart swelled. Maybe that was the real ending. Not the court victory, not the trust, not the recorded message, but this, the quiet resurrection of love. If someone asked me today what legacy I wanted to leave behind, it'd say this: home is not something you pass down in a will. Home is something you build in people. And the ones who stay through the storms, through the silence, through the ugly parts, those are the ones who deserve your love. I chose Emily, and Daniel chose to grow. In the end, we all won something. Not property, not power, but connection. And that is the only inheritance that matters. The end.